ライド。その光は暗き世界を書き換えていく。これはエクスカルペイトザ・ブラスター。
Hey guys, we're from HAXs VGC. This is going to be a mini review of the mini booster that's coming out for PSYqualia that is featuring both Kagero and Royal Paladin. I am James.
I'm Steven.
I'm Vien.
And I'm Alex.
Alright, we're going to start off with Kagero and then go into Royal Paladin. Steven, do you want to take over the Kagero?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James. So we're going to start off talking about the Novel archetype in this mini booster. It's a whole new line of cards that all support each other, which is a cool concept. We haven't really gotten subclans yet in Standard, so this is our first little take on archetype forming. For those who stuck around in the previous format, Novel used to be a very meta-dominating deck. It rode the Dauntless, Break Ride, and Novel Silent Tom skill. It defined the format for several months. Unfortunately, things are not quite the same here in Standard. We're going to go ahead and start talking about Novel Roman Dragon, the grade 1. Its skill is when you place it, you can send a Novel Dragon back into your deck and then grab a Dragonic Overlord as your ride. Vien, what do you think about this?
Personally, I don't think it's a really great card, seeing as though you have to commit 2 cards from hand to get a Dragonic Overlord. Kagero already doesn't really plus much, and all your other grade 1s are such a better option for the deck.
Yeah, I totally agree. Grade 1s are really the slot that Kagero shines the most with its very high value cycling and counter charge from Eremo, the power gain from Ropia, and the Dragonic Gaius. There's really just so much threat coming in the grade 1 slot. You're giving up so much opportunity cost to be running a grade Fitzer for a card that shouldn't even be your main ride. What do you think, Alex?
So I think this card is actually pretty mediocre. One of the bigger reasons why I have this opinion is because the card takes up a lot of important slots. In Kagero, you have a bunch of really strong grade 1s actually in comparison to a lot of other clans, such as Eremo, Gaius, Ropia. And so if you put this in, you're taking out one of the really important tools that Kagero does possess. And then this, in a way, lowers your consistency for lethal because your game plan is basically just killing your opponent in waterfall lethal range.
Will you play this as a grade 2?
Yes.
Okay. So the main issue with the card is not so much the effect, it's that it's taking up very valuable grade 1 slot. Is your problem with it?
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost. Like, the grade 2 slots are probably the most flexible slot for Kagero. Berserk Dragon being the only mandatory edition, and then there's a lot of tech options for the rest. A lot of different ratios in the Hallam or the Shield of Lam, and there's just a lot of different tech options there, even spillover. So, like, you're giving up your best slot for this, and that's the real issue here.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, next up, we're going to talk about Novel Critic Dragon. Now, I am the biggest fan of this card because it's the only direct plus Kagero has in its entire deck. Its skill, rearguards a circle only. When it hits a Vanguard, you get to search your deck for a Novel, put it in your hand, and shuffle free of charge. Vien, what do you think about this?
I'm not particularly a big fan of this card, seeing as though it's a 10k vanilla, which really you're forced to commit board to get it to hit, which on the off chance that it does hit, you get Nouvelle out, but your opponent sees it being played, they're going to automatically deny it because they don't want to see Nouvelle out on board. I don't really see this card doing much for the deck, but if you are running pure Nouvelle, an Overlord deck, I would see it being run.
That makes sense. What do you think, Alex?
So I think this card is actually pretty decent at what it does, mainly because it carries the on-hit pressure that lets you set up for future turns. And what I mean by this is that Kagero's primary win condition is putting your opponent in lethal range for waterfall and then just killing them off that because you have the guard restricted, you have such high power coming off of that, and because of that they'll try to guard you very early in order to secure a low damage for the future turns. And with this, which secures on-hit pressure, you make it much more difficult for them to guard optimally.
James?
They're all fair point. I am of the mind that I don't like this card. I understand the reasoning that yes, it's the only on-hit plus that they get, but it's 10k. Like, even with most booster, it's a 1 card guard a lot of the time, and it doesn't do a lot for you into all of your bad matchups. And the way I evaluate this card is that it's gonna go off once or twice in 5 games, and I don't know if that's worth dedicating a grade 2 slot for. But at the same time, their grade 2, as you mentioned, are lackluster, so I can see running it, but at the same time, it's probably going to go the moment they get a better grade 2.
Yeah, I agree. As much as I love the card, it's really just, it's better than trash. So we'll take it as Kagero players. All right, moving on to the final edition for Kagero, the Novel card himself, Transcendence Dragon, Draconic Novel Vague. Act Vanguard Circle once per turn. You have the Soul Blast at grade 3 or greater, and until the end of your turn, you nullify all your opponent's triggers. It gains 20k, and you lose a drive, but it also wipes the opponent's board if you are at 5 damage. What are you thinking, Vien?
Nouvelle is an interesting card. I wouldn't say that's bad, but I wouldn't say that it's overly great either. The negate trigger effects and the 20k provides a lot of pressure. Board wipe is also very good against XL matchups and clans that have trouble building board or plus into hand, but the drive -1 really sets back the card, seeing as that how if your opponent does survive the Nouvelle turn, you're going to be set back a card compared to your opponent's hand size.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most divisive card in the community right now over how people are feeling about it. When you get it off and you get the board wipe off, it feels great, especially against, like you mentioned, SL matchups, or even the now very popular Shadow Paladin matchup, or even the Murakuma matchup, which is an SL matchup, but tends to put on as much pressure as a force stack. It really, the punch it gives from wiping the board is great. The cost of riding it from hand is not so great, and losing the drive is not so great. What do you think, Alex?
So when you initially read the card, you get Soul Blast 3 and you negate triggers, which, yeah, that's pretty cool, right? Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the original novella. Negating triggers, always a cool thing. As you continue reading the card, though, okay, plus 20k, and then -1 drive. You're like, ouch. And then, you read, okay, the board retire, it's tied into being at 5 damage either player. And you go, okay, now this card becomes on the mediocre side of things because it's so restricted, right? You have a 15k base, which allows you to survive XL matchups more than you already are, but Promised Daughter's still hitting 15k, which is quite unfortunate. And not only that, but you can't even retire the Promised Daughter, which feels even worse because your OTT matchup doesn't change, and you still just get PG. You don't guard restrict like Waterfall does, so it's just kind of a feels bad card.
And that's fair. It's really hard to kind of glide to 5 one way or the other. Either if the Waterfall didn't kill them, they're likely at lower damage because the Waterfall didn't get the lethal with the Draconic Gaius combo. Or if you're at 5, you're likely losing because now you're at 5 damage, and then a lot of decks have just so much pressure these days. What do you think, James?
I don't like this card. I just truly don't like this card. Like, how do I put it? It is, in concept, designed to help Kagero, but it does not help Kagero in all of the matchup it's bad against, in my opinion. Historically, everything that Kagero is bad against, like some of the more defensive protect deck that can outlast Waterfall and grind you down, or even other force matchup, I don't feel like it's that helpful. The main issue is that it's a grade 4. I think this card would be a great card as a grade 3, mainly because Waterfall is such a strong card for Kagero that if you ride this card, you're committing yourself to losing the Waterfall. So it's like you're taking a bullet out of your chamber, and I think that's a big issue. Also, it's very overcosted in my opinion. I think it should not have gotten the -1 drive. I think this card would have been very fair because it's already limited to 5 damage. So if you're limiting this to putting yourself at ultimate break, I feel that the -1 drive is very unnecessary.
Yeah, I think in Bushiroad's mind, you're supposed to Waterfall them to 5, then ride Novelle. It's like, oh, you're swinging for so much power. You're swinging like 70k. Then you just get like PG'd by most of the meta decks, and you're like, well, that was a neg 2. Fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and I'll move it over to James for the Royal Paladin portion.
All right, we're going to talk about Royal Paladin and the 3 cards that they got. So similar to Novelle, Royal Paladin got 3 cards that in theory support the same archetype, which is XComplete, which really in standard is basically Blaster Dot deck. It's really funny and somewhat kind of sad. So first card we're going to talk about the triple rare Sage of Guidance Xenon. When placed from hand, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If the reveal card is same grade as your Vanguard, you write it as stand. If it's not, you put that card in your drop zone. Thoughts, Alex?
So I don't think the card is necessarily bad. I think the card is more so poorly designed. And the reason why is because the skill, it's because you'd have to discard whatever you get off the top of the deck. And why this is so bad for the deck is because Royal Paladin is a very combo heavy deck, right? You have your Kane Pongo combo, you have Alfred Early Blaster Blade, and even the Blaster Blade XComplete, which is a card we'll talk about later on. Should you discard any of these cards, suddenly your combo kind of falls apart, and that's the part where the card falters, right? Hypothetically, if it didn't have this issue of like, hey, you're gonna mill a combo piece, then it could be seen as a way of filtering. So that's why I'm saying it's more so on the side of just poorly designed rather than just being a flat out terrible card.
Okay, fair enough. Vin?
I think it's just a bad card, really. I understand the point that Alex just made, where if it had been designed a little bit differently, it would have been decent. But even then, I feel like it's still taking up your grade 1 slots, which Alex had mentioned that the deck is very combo heavy. And I feel that slotting it in for the high roll of rewriting is not really great.
Steven?
Yeah, this is every set. It feels like they gotta have what I like to call anime bait, where you gotta pull off the combo they show you in the anime to try to get you to run this combo, and the Xenon is 100% anime bait. It is. You're giving up combo slots. You're giving up combo pieces. Like this card only feels good when it works. It doesn't even feel okay if it doesn't work. You feel legitimately bad whenever it does not work.
Okay, all fair point, and I do think this card's bad right now. I feel like this is set up. I actually feel like this entire set is set up for Booster 3 for Royal Paladin. I have a feeling that they're gonna get a card that top deck a specific card somehow, and this will let you get the rewrite. So this potentially might have a lot of use in the future. Or it can just be trash, like it is now. You can't really go any worse from this, so it's fine.
So one implication that I do want to mention is that Xenon with Ultima actually is a pretty interesting combo. The reason why is because Ultima does stack the deck. So what you can do is when you play Ultima, you stack your deck, you put XComplete on top alongside a trigger, and then you play Xenon, and then Xenon checks top, and then you reveal XComplete. And because Ultima's skill is for the entire turn, because it's on place, you ride the XComplete, and then so for the entire turn, if you hit the trigger, then your entire board gets that trigger effect, and then when you swing Blaster Blade, you still get the trigger effect. So it's kind of cool.
When you just run the old Xenon to guarantee it off of the ZR play, so you can call it from deck instead of this, because they literally have the same effect.
I mean, it was an honest attempt to defend it. Give me some credit.
Yeah, this card is terrible. Like the only benefit it has is the extra power, which is irrelevant. Why is this card triple rare? I feel like I'm being troll in this booster. Anyways, moving on. Next card is the grade 2 triple rare, Sage of Salvation, Benon. When placed from hand. Oh, actually, this is when placed. Cost, review and excavate the blaster from your hand, return to your deck, search your deck for an outfit early, review it, and put it into your hand, and you shuffle your deck. What do you think, Alex?
Right, so I feel this card, it conflicts way too much with the playstyle that the deck wants to achieve. On one hand, Banon searches for the Alfred early, right? And Alfred early, it wants to call the Blaster Blade out to the rearguard circle in order to get plus that way. Versus XComplete, which wants the Blaster Blade to remain in soul, from either keeping it in soul through soul charge or from putting it to from hand to soul. And so they conflict too much because if you use Alfred early skill, then you have to hard draw into the Blaster Blade somehow in order to resolve the XComplete skill. Also, you don't have a lot of room. You have a lot of very valuable rear guards already, so this kind of just doesn't fit per se.
I am of the same agreement. I think this card should have said Alfred instead of just Alfred early, because Alfred early, in my opinion, is not a very good card. It was fine because it's technically an on-ride +2, but it's also quite a bad card to sit on because they lose a lot of pressure being on it. I don't think it's worth guaranteeing the ride and running a 10k vanilla. What do you think, Vin?
I think if Novella Critic was the same as Benon, it would have been a great card, seeing as how it is a grade 2 on place. But looking at it from a Royals perspective, and how you guys mentioned that it does work against the deck, it doesn't work too good for Royals.
Yeah, the difference is we have good grade 2s.
I see. But yeah, it does eat up a slot. I see other decks running the 15k vanilla, which is better alternative to running Beyond.
This is a weird scenario where Royals had 3 different grade 3s they were running, whereas Kagura really only had 2. And so if Benon had grabbed the other Alfred, the one that people actually sit on, the VR, King of Knights Alfred, I believe is his name, this would have been a great card because it actually gets you your first ride. But Alfred early isn't actually your first ride anymore with this new Escalade build. So it goes actively against the plan, which is why I don't like it.
Yeah, there's really not much to say about it. I think they swapped the support. Like, if this has been a grade 1, Royal actually doesn't have amazing grade 1 slot, so I can slot this into the grade 1. And Royal has really good grade 2s in general, so I just can't fit this in, really.
So one interesting thing to note actually is that a lot of builds in Japan have forsaken the Alfred early completely, and they opt for some sort of ratio with the XComplete Soul Saver and the Alfred VR, which is King of Knights Alfred. Just because it conflicts so much with the game plan that they want to be pure XComplete, focused on that win con.
Yeah, it's really funny. Because Kagura actually have the good read 3 in Overlord that they want to ride, where Royal has the opposite problem. I think if this and Roman Critic has swapped skill and gray slot, it would have been much better.
Feels Kagura, man.
Moving on. The big card of the set that's also equally as divided as Novell, Exculpate the Blaster. So his skill is when placed on Vanguard, cost +1, choose one card from your soul. You will put all other cards than that one card into your drop zone, and when this unit attack, it attack all of your opponent units this one turn. At the end of battle attack, you may put 2 cards from your hand. Well, you have to put 2 cards from your hand to your soul. You retire this unit and ride a Blaster Blade from your soul as stand. If you do not have a Blaster Blade ride, you lose the game. Thoughts, Alex?
All right, so I hear a lot of things about XComplete. I hear a lot that, oh, it's just super mediocre, that the card is just Royal Paladin version Novell, blah, 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 right? I'm here to clarify all this misinformation and tell you that XComplete is a crazy, fantastic card, right? Initially, when the set was released in Japan, granted, it was week 1 of the set release, it didn't see that many tops. You know, people were still trying to figure out how XComplete was supposed to work. People were still under the impression that XComplete was a mediocre card. Come week 2 of Japanese VGCS season, XComplete, or Royal Paladins, start to top. And this is because people understand now that XComplete is, whoa, it's a crazy good card. And, you know, I'll talk about that more right now. So the first effect, the ability to board wipe for a single counterblast. Now, I started playing in G-Era, and in G-Era, you have Luard, Altmile, Gurguit, all of these decks that are capable of generating a lot of value. They can generate an entire board just like nothing, out of thin air. In Standard, however, you have 6 or 7 cards in your hand, and a board wipe, once you do that, you now have to commit all that card to recreating your board. Not, mind you, right, that Exculpate skill is on attack. You still have to guard the Exculpate attack, and then you have to recreate the board for the next turn. Because Exculpate is a much more Vanguard-centric deck, Exculpate swings for 34k. You're more than likely going to PG it because you don't want to get crit sack. And then after that, Exculpate de-rides into Blaster Blade. And Blaster Blade, because of the Force Markers, is swinging for 30k with Wingle, 43k with an extra critical. Guaranteed critical, mind you. So that's probably 2 perfect guards out of their hand. So that's 4 cards mandatory that your opponent has to drop in order to survive the Vanguard alone. And you have all these other rear guards. You have Akane Pongo Call, which is swinging for 21k, possibly 26k. And you have Gavanan, which is 15k by itself, boosted by an AK, it's 23k. So you just have insane amount of value, and you're swinging at your opponent, and the likelihood that they survive or can kill you in the backswing is super unlikely.
That's a fair point. Vin, what do you think?
I think X-Play is a great card. It does a lot for the Royals deck. It provides them a chance to win against previously unfavored matchups, specifically Protect lands, seeing as how previously Royals win con was to beef out Soul Saver Dragon, swing for 3 columns, and end turn. X-Plate gives Royals a better option for winning against those Protect decks since it's able to rip out more cards of their hand and puts them at better position. Plus, it doesn't restrict you at grade 4 like Novell does since you're rewriting Blaster Blade. So even if they do survive the X-Plate turn, you can still rewrite into your grade 3, get another Force Marker, and continue on.
Okay. Steven?
Feels Kagura, man. Once again, if we had swapped skills, Kagura would be living the high life. Kagura would kill for a restander of any kind that is not conditional upon hitting, as the Dronic Overlord card is. Restanding is Kagura's gimmick. Give it back.
Safe to say you think this is a pretty good card?
Oh yeah, this is the best card out of the set, bar none.
I am of agreement. I know the internet hated this card the moment it got revealed, and an easy way to evaluate this card is the average card that it takes from your opponent on a turn that you do this. So in average game state, your opponent is not going to have 0 rigor. They're going to have on average 3, possibly 4 rigor, right? So they're losing those 4 rigor. And then they have to guard your Vanguard twice if they're at 4, unless they want to potentially lose to a crit on your first swing. Your second swing has a built-in crit. So that's 2 potential big column that they have to PG. So minimum 4 or more card to guard with. And then you also have your rigor columns. And if you hit a crit on any of your 3 drive check you get that turn, then that's a potential 3rd column that they have to guard. So you're talking of potentially 10 card that your opponent is losing that turn if you hit 1 crit in 3 drive check, which I don't think is very high roll for the deck. So it's a lot of pressure. And as mentioned, because you go back to 2, yes, it is a -1, and you go back to 10k defense, which could be pretty difficult to guard, but you just neg your opponent 10 cards. Like, how many decks is gonna have the hand size to just casually guard this turn and develop a board to kill you, you know? Like, if you're at low damage, the reason this card is great is because unlike Novell, the skill is not limited to being at 5 damage. So you can actually play this as a tempo play mid-game. Against any sort of deck that pressure you can go into the second right and immediately shut down their board, and then just right into your grade 3 the next turn. It's objectively a dank 1 cost.
So there are a few more points that I do want to make just to, push XComplete a little bit further up the food chain. So if there are some concerns about how the OTT matchup goes for XComplete, right? Because OTT is the most dominant deck. But what you have to realize is that Promise Daughter does get retired from XComplete because XComplete attacks the board. So Promise Daughter is not immune to it. The second point that I want to make is that in order to draw the XComplete, or rather draw the Blaster Blade so you can put it into Soul for XComplete, you have Marin, you have Alan, both of which draw. You also have Pongal, which inherently soul charge. So you have all these like really good tools to get the Blaster Blade, win con in order for the XComplete to pop off, so you just don't auto lose the game. So with these in mind, XComplate's actually pretty consistent overall, I'd have to say.
I just wanted to kind of say Standard is a format defined by punch and counter punch, and Speculate is like the biggest counter punch you can ever have. And it doesn't need to be counter punch because you're at 5, and then your opponent can't counter punch you nearly as hard. So it's just a very snowbally kind of card.
Yeah, it's good. It's also, to mention the meta, it's also good into Shadows because, Shadow do need the 3 rigor for Phantom Blaster Dragon. And most likely, they're not going to Phantom Blaster you first. The game plan is to go into Dark Dictator, retire, develop board, plus some cards. Probably use them in the main engine to constantly plus on the main every turn. You go into this and you shut down that entire setup that they have, and they have to guard the turn. And then on the backswing, they have to develop 3 cards, retire them in order to pop your board, and potentially they may not even get the damage burn if you have enough rigor on board. So it's an excellent card into the meta. With that said, you guys want to add anything else before we move on?
Overall, I feel like XComplete actually raises Royal Paladin up a tier. Makes it tier 1 deck, because just having a stronger overall consistent game plan is very good.
That's a fair assessment. Most of the deck in Standard, I think, are pretty decent. Even the worst deck in Standard, Nova Grappler, is not objectively that bad. It really just need a few cards to be where you want it to be. So, yeah, I think second wave of support, the meta should even out a lot more. What do you guys think of these cards' impact on the meta? Go ahead and start with you, Stu.
I think Kagero is going to settle just beneath tier 1. I think it's going to slowly start seeing less and less tops as more clans get introduced, and especially with this being the last announced support we have for a long time. Mark my words, Dronic over the end will be busted when it comes back because Kagero's going to need a hero.
Ben?
Even though Nouvelle didn't really do much for the deck, and we don't see much deck lists running its support, we still see that Kagero is a relevant deck in the meta, seeing as how it stands up to OTT and protect decks, being able to deny Sentinel and crit pressure. But as Steven said, it will still sit below tier 1.
Yeah, Wild Forest is a good card. Who would have think? Alex?
So, as I said before, and just to reiterate it, I feel like XComplete does push Royals up to tier 1. Royals now has a better and more favorable matchup into many of the meta decks. It has a pretty good matchup into OTT actually now because you can just force protect gifts, and overall, it just feels like it pushes the clan up higher.
Yeah, and I agree. And we also have Japanese result to support your statement because as of now, we're a few weeks into the booster release, and Royal Paladin's been topping pretty consistently, almost as much as OTT. And the other decks running out are Shadow Paladin, Murakumo, and Kagero, all topping quite a bit. So yeah, they're all within. Those would be the top 5 decks in the meta right now. If I have to make a top 5 list, obviously OTT would be the best. I think Murakumo is the second best deck. Shadow Paladin is 3rd, Kagero is 4th, and Royal sit in 5th. The reason I put Royal in 5th is because the core deck is still very mediocre. This card helped the deck a lot, but again, it's a 2-of that you run, and you really don't have a way to search for it. Unlike Kagero, which has the ability to search for Novell, they did not give Royal Paladin the ability to search for this card, and you don't want to run it at such a high number. Then you'll be forced to run Benon and stuff like that to filter it out of your hand to get outfit early. So it's a 2-of. If you don't ride it in time, the deck's still mediocre, so it's going to lose. So that's why I put it at 5th. just because the other 4 decks have much more consistent win condition. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Will you guys agree?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's pretty much all to say about the set. Thanks for watching, guys. We're from HAX VGC.
Deal.
Yep.
Peace.